G'day everyone, welcome back to another week of the Crypto Chronicle Podcast. Your hosts are Mitchell and this is William.
Are we?
Good. It was good to get back to the podcast last week. We obviously had a bit of a generalised rundown about our trip to the States, but obviously this week we want to kind of get back into the groove of things, speak about the recent news in the market, recent price action, just our general thoughts around things.
Missing out on token 2049.
Yeah, it seems like almost every man and their dog is there, isn't there?
I'd love to go. We can't be travelling all year.
No, we can't, but we probably will make the conscious decision maybe to get there next year. There are usually two of them, I think, or a couple of them throughout the year. So, but I think, yeah, as for anyone in the industry that's out there, it seems like this is the one to go to, particularly for those that want to know the differences. We went to the Bitcoin conference, obviously. This is a lot more, you'd say, blockchain technology focused and altcoin. Yeah, with everyone from every project there.
Seems like a new thing to not post, the image of you as a speaker, but just as an attendee.
Yeah, shout out to our CoinStash people we noticed that from, and almost everyone putting up a little graphic.
Like everyone was doing it. I've just never seen it before. Now it's all a thing.
Nah, neither. It's great. But yeah, we thought we'd kick off, obviously, going back into that groove of things, a bit of fundamental news in the market. For those that obviously don't know, but remember the great man CZ, he was probably a topic of this podcast many a times since we started it mid last year. It wasn't until kind of, I think, the start of this year, he had his official sentencing for where Binance went wrong in the States. For those that don't know, he was essentially sent to prison for not having effective anti-money laundering practices in place. People like to kind of group Binance and FTX or CZ and SBF similarly, but they're nothing of the likes. SBF stole customer funds and punted with those. CZ's never touched anyone's funds.
Not to mention when CZ started Binance, it was a completely different landscape. There was literally no direction. It was the Wild West,
Exactly. So I think, they kind of went into the unregulated market that it was, did what they could, and then realised they probably didn't have a couple of things in place for Gary to not come down hard on them.
Pretty harsh when you think about it. Like you're operating a business in a landscape that there's literally no direction. And it's what we always say, like there's not regulation there to support these people, but as soon as something bad happens, they come down on them like a ton of bricks.
Yeah, it's always been the wrong way. And I guess we'll touch on it a bit later with the bipartisanship and obviously the Democratic Party and their views. But yeah, it is a bit of a sticky point at the moment. But we did mention last week, it was hilarious to see Trump kind of come out and make that his main crypto point at the Bitcoin conference was to fire Gary Gensler and get a new administration in place for digital assets. But the good thing is, I feel about CZ is almost this jokey fundamental side, and we spoke on it yesterday, didn't we? That I kind of joked that, it gets released on September 29th. That's about, let's call it 10 days after the first rate cut, a couple of days out from October, I like to call it, which is October, which is seasonally a really good month, which I'll touch on later. But we're interested in what he does when he gets released, doesn't he? He's doing a Giggle Academy at the moment. Yeah,
there's a few things, like, I noticed that it was coming close to him coming out like a week or two ago, and I was like, I miss CZ, Some people had their opinions, or Binance was very centralized. I think anyone that went through the bear market pretty much saved us.
For sure.
Especially when that FTX stuff was going across, was even thinking of acquiring it. Didn't in the end. But I went and looked at, okay, what was he doing? I remember in his closing statement when he resigned as CEO that he was talking about he wanted to get into DeFi. And I went to go and have a look, and I didn't really know about this Giggle Academy. It seems like just education for kids. Looks very animated type stuff or whatever. It's one thing that it was the last thing he was posted before he went into the clink. And the other thing, I just remember him saying, he's going to do some stuff in DeFi. So it'd be interesting to see what that is. Yeah, well, that's obviously, I feel like me and you, particularly as DeFi heads or as utility investors, one would say, is that we've really like yearned for that DeFi comeback, haven't we? And I think, as we mentioned last week with the impending release of Sonic, and I think a really big thing for DeFi is obviously Andre's coming back to the market and his involvement with the 4 to 5 new DeFi primitives that he wants to invest in, which we won't speak on, obviously, because we might even have Hoops, obviously, from Equalizer as an incoming guest on our next podcast. We can discuss all things Phantom and Sonic. But obviously, I've noticed
Vitalik, even in the last month, you can see his social media engagement is picking up hugely, and he's making a number of comments as well on DeFi. Yeah, and then obviously with CZ being released, it might be awesome to see. Maybe he's the one that really, kickstarts that fire under the belly of DeFi again with Andre, with Vitalik, and we move away from maybe the meme coin mania that we once had at the start of the year.
I hope he comments on his time in prison as well. I want to kind of someone of his nature and success probably never thought it was on the cards that he was in a prison, and maybe he comes out full monk mode and isn't interested in crypto anymore. Who knows? But
maybe he comes out a bit of a beast. He's just been pushing those push-ups and sit-ups. Comes out with the jail rig. But so that happens September 29th. Pretty interesting timing, and it'll be really interesting. We'll obviously having a podcast around that time, and we'll see how the market reacts then. But
discuss more then.
Yeah. Moving on to usually we have maybe one institutional piece in the week with the fundamental news, and the recent big thing that I found was Sony's involvement now in crypto and blockchain technology, and they built. Their blockchain division has come out with a layer 2 solution called the Sony blockchain, which aims to nurture emerging talent in the blockchain sphere. Look, it's got a number of things going for it, but the thing that I want to kind of discuss as, an important part of this was kind of the Eastern economy involvement in crypto. A lot of the time, you and I or anyone, we kind of only speak about Australia or particularly America. We speak on the macro thesis there, Coinbase, your BlackRocks. But I always feel like the Eastern economies are the ones forgotten about. We've got to forget how much liquidity as well when we speak on places like China, Japan, Hong Kong.
Huge.
And, I find it interesting that, Japan's slowly getting there. Obviously with Sony, Hong Kong, we saw ETFs early in the year accepted there. Will China eventually come around?
China was a big player in the crypto space, particularly in the mining space. Let's say 2018, 19, 20. In 2020, they banned it.
Well, I think that was, for people that were around then, that was one of the great black swans of that cycle where they banned it. It was just as bad as COVID,
we had so many miners over there. It was like, that was like the first, God, this isn't good. Had to ship them all out of there. But, they still dominate the manufacturing space, obviously, with chips. I don't know. I think they're getting, their policy seems to be leaning more pro crypto.
Well, I think it kind of started, and whether you think it's pro crypto, it really started with the CBDCs for them. Obviously, big proponents of CBDC technology, and one thing that governments, you can see, are kind of going towards and realizing a huge thing is stable coins, right? How easy it is to transfer monetary value of fiat through stable coins, whether it be a USD tied stable coin, a Chinese or a Japanese yen one, or whatever it is. It'll be really interesting to see where they kind of end up with it all, and where Japan and Sony end up with it all, because it's awesome just to see another big player in the space.
We've got BRICS as well, which is emerging. So as you say, it's really important that Eastern side does, and it's going to have a big influence. So we'll report on it as it unfolds. Yeah, for sure.
Going back to kind of what we're speaking about with Gary Gensler before, and obviously CZ and Binance getting done by the CFTC and then the SEC as well. Obviously a big thing that we spoke about last week was Donald J. Trump and both Robert Kennedy Jr., both who are obviously an independent and the Republican Party nominee, being huge on crypto, coming out saying we're going to build a strategic reserve. I guess probably one of the bearish overhangs I found of this market is the election, isn't it? Because, it's almost like when Trump's odds go up, everyone gets a bit more bullish, and then when his odds come down, or when Kamala's increase, everyone gets a bit more scared. And it's really been because of that kind of hawkish overhanging of Gary Gensler of the SEC on the market. My view, obviously, is that it should be bipartisan crypto because, plain and simple, I understand for the short term, we probably want someone like Trump in power because he has been more bullish. Their administration won't be as hawkish. It means people like Gary Gensler are removed. But how do you see it? Obviously, they have been hawkish. They haven't done anything for 4 years.
Yeah, that's exactly my point. I think it's a big point that Donald should emphasize a lot more. He did do it in the debate a little bit, but it is the Democrat Party, not the Harris Party at the end of the day. And they've been in power for 4 years, and she seems to come out and say these things. And in the notes, you got Coinbase, which we'll talk about in a second. But they come out and say all these things. Oh, we're going to be more pro crypto. We're going to do all these other things. It's like, well, why haven't you done it yet? So it's soft words.
Yeah.
It's just all talk trying to appeal to everyone, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I still have skepticism that I don't think the Harris campaign is going to be good for crypto. Even though they're saying that they want to work with it.
Yeah.
I think crypto is going to be a lot better hands in the Democrats. RFK endorsing Trump. I'm sure he'll be. Working with him and informing him of what his understanding of Bitcoin is and why it's good for the economy. That's kind of my opinion.
Yeah, and really kind of, I guess the optimism here with the Harris administration or Democratic administration is that Coinbase or their chief legal officer kind of expressed that they kind of had really good talks with them, and he kind of has predicted that there's going to be a pro-crypto Congress emerge, which I would really like to see. And, whilst, as I said, the short term would probably favour Republicans, for us all as cryptocurrency investors and enthusiasts, eventually it needs to come full circle and be bipartisan, because the reality is Republicans aren't going to be in power forever.
Exactly right.
And the Democrats aren't going to be in power forever. It's going to shift and change. And the reality even is 12 of the last 16 years have been Democratic. So
exactly. And so without being too pessimistic, it is nice to see that. I would way prefer that, if Kamala or the Democrats come in and they're pro-crypto, that's great. It's a win-win for crypto either way. But just being realistic, they like to please the people with words. And actions don't always follow through. So.
Of course, and I think that can kind of happen on either side. We're not... All of us are hopefully not sheep, and we know that politicians probably like to say a few things to get the voters over the line, that they may not fulfill those promises. But it'll be a really interesting watch, at least, to see, as the odds shift up and down. At the moment, it's almost like it's changing every day. 51-49, 50-50, 49-51, whatever it is. A bit of a watch this space really on that.
The other point is as well, a big part of what I feel Harris's campaign does target, this woke or whatever, is probably a younger generation, right? And these people in the younger generation are probably the ones that are a bit more understanding of crypto and pro-crypto. So, there would be a big portion of Democratic supporters that probably are crypto supporters as well, and maybe they get a bit pissed off.
It's what's interesting to me, at least, whether this is at any fault of their own, but, they both clearly made a push within their parties to say, okay, we need to target this demographic, which is the cryptocurrency voter, because that's a large portion of our country. So 20% of Americans hold crypto, whatever it is, 30%. But the interesting thing to me is, it never gets raised in the debates. I think, obviously, the clear thing to us that we probably need to understand is there's a lot more issues at stake that are more important than Bitcoin, well, at least in the eyes of the normal citizen or normal politician. Up to us, obviously, it's probably the most important. I feel like that's the interesting I found, is that neither of them have raised in either debate, haven't had a question asked about it, or it's really been none of their concern when it's come to the big stage, not just talking to a crypto crowd.
I mean, at the best of times, they'll get asked about the economy or the stock market, and they don't really give much anyway. We wouldn't get much out of it, I don't think. But it's a good point. It hasn't even been mentioned, really. Anyway, that's what it is.
Well, in circling it back now from Eastern economies to America, but back to the Australian market, two different articles that I'll include in the Crypto Written Chronicle. If you want to take a read, obviously you can read on any of the topics we're speaking on now. There'll be an article provided. But it's about Australian investors firstly embracing cryptocurrency, a cohort of them that are. And this is whilst, other asset class interests wane. Now, this has obviously been things like property, asset classes that are quite expensive to get into. Obviously, you would need to acquire a home loan or some form of debt, or maybe even if you had all the cash, you're still outlaying a lot of cash for what is property in Australia. It's just so bloody expensive. And really what these kind of results have shown is that the younger generations in particular are really, specifically Gen Zs and millennials, believe that, the decentralized nature of cryptocurrency, they have a lot easier barriers to entry, don't they?
Yeah, and I think a big thing here, and it was mentioned in the article, is people are saying that a big part of this is the informing the people as well, on financial freedom and how to manage your finances. And speaking from my personal perspective, that was something that I did notice, and I think we had a conversation in America about this, is
thank God for crypto, because it's opened our eyes to how money actually works, how banks actually work, the importance of managing your finances and not just trusting people, etc. Right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest thing that I find here is the government, not just regulation side, but it's actually about them providing the education, right, for people to get into it. But back to your main point, which is people being able to get into crypto easier than, say, property. It's super important. You can invest $100 a month into crypto, whereas getting into property is not really possible.
Well,
with a budget like that.
That's a massive thing. I think is what probably more people are starting to realise, and why it's getting so popular in a place like Australia, because I think close to 30% of Australians have either owned or own cryptocurrency, and I think the global adoption rate now has gone up to about 6% from 4.5%. So really, we're 5 times the global adoption rate, and I think it's obvious for the reasons you said, right? And what I've mentioned, you need a home loan. You need to go through all these legal fees, to go through a big bank. They've got to scan through all your bank statements. And I think that's always been one of the biggest proponents of cryptocurrency is anyone, any sex, any age, obviously 18 or older, but any person with any form of financial freedom is able to invest in cryptocurrency because of its barriers to entry. All you have to really do is educate yourself on how to set up a wallet, how to join a cryptocurrency exchange such as CoinStash, deposit your AUD and away you go. You will cop a tiny, very, very minor fee, but that's a lot less than what it would cost to invest in probably any other asset class.
Yeah, and even again, speaking personal perspective, we did economics at uni. We're probably interested in stocks and things a bit more than the average person, but wanting to invest and then kind of realizing, okay, well, at the time I'm 18, 19, I've got $1,000 to invest. If I put that into a stock, I'm paying $50 to $100 fee just to buy the stock, then plus a fee to sell it, then plus, you know what I mean? It's just not really there.
Yeah.
And then, in stocks, maybe 2xing your investment, it maybe takes a year or two, right? Whereas for these younger people where they should have a higher risk appetite, given if they lose $1,000, it's not going to be the end of the world. Getting into something that's easy like crypto, has more volatility, potentially can 2-3x in a short amount of time. It makes a lot of sense. So
and like you said, it teaches you so much about the market. From the simplicity of understanding it as an inflationary hedge, and I'm sure most listeners or any form of investor now knows just how little value their cash is having year on year now due to money printing and the various fiscal and monetary policies that governments implement. And you wouldn't learn about these things otherwise until you study Bitcoin. You read the white paper. Okay, why was this created? Oh, okay, I understand why it was created. Okay, financial intermediaries in the middle, they take everything, got it. And then going from there and just learning everything really opens your
building
eyes.
Blocks, right?
Yeah. And it kind of takes me to our next article, which was kind of talking about cryptocurrency investors in Australia and how there's a cohort. And we've spoken about it so many times on this podcast, the lack of innovation and regulatory push by the government and those high up to make cryptocurrency the safest it possibly can be as an investment in Australia. And I guess that's what we really strive for at Imperial Wealth, is teaching you guys exactly what regulations there are, how you can invest, what not to invest in, what to invest in. But I think it's also a really exciting thing about Australia is that there is a large cohort wanting to. We just need that regulation in place.
100%. And exactly what you said there. When we go to these conferences, particularly the Australian Crypto Con, and you speak to people, you either speak to people that have been in it for a short amount of time, 6 to 12 months, and you can already tell how much more they understand about money and finances compared to someone who really green who comes up and you try to explain these things and they're like, yeah, okay. And then, it takes a little bit longer. So super important. And one of the best ways to educate yourself on finances is start investing into crypto. Yeah,
exactly. Alrighty, we'll move on to the technical part of the podcast. Obviously, last week, I think we briefly touched on macro thesis, liquidity, all that and whatnot. Obviously, the biggest, probably fundamental event to date, besides the launch of the ETFs in January for 2024, is this impending rate cut. Now, for those that don't know, we're referring to the US Federal Reserve, and obviously the US monetary and fiscal policy when we talk about these things, because they are the largest economy in the world, and sadly, whatever they do dictates whatever we do, even the Australian Reserve. And so really that happens on Wednesday, which is Thursday Australian time. The expectations now are about 67% for a 50 basis points rate cut, which is usually pretty rare. Usually it's done in 25 increments. And I even saw today there are a number of senators, including Yellen, that, wrote a letter to Jerome Powell asking for a 75 BPS rate cut.
Wow. That would be an impact on the market.
Yeah. That would be really impact on the market. So I guess for anyone trading or, definitely on leverage, you'll see the volatility and turbulence this week. It'll be crazy. But I'll start with the DXY. That's pretty much come down from as high as 106 or 107 in recent months to now as low as 100.6, 100.7, which marks our yearly lows for the entire year. Now, I expect, given that we're supposed to get rate cuts, I think, due through to December 2025. That's how they plan ahead. You'll expect to see the DXY go lower than 100. And what this should do by macro thesis is bring an influx of liquidity into the global market, shouldn't it?
Yep. People to loan money, more money to spend.
Exactly. And what people shouldn't get too caught up on is it doesn't just happen a rate cut and people looking, why aren't we plus 20k? They're obviously a lagging effect. Obviously, most clearest, easiest way to say why there's an influx in liquidity is because people go from holding bonds and they go from holding that 5.5% cash reserve that they're getting, and they then move it into the stock markets. There's so much money sidelined right now that have just been taking the most of this interest rate in the States. It's such an easy return. 5.5% per annum is
considered like the risk-free rate of return.
Yeah, risk-free rate, because I'm pretty sure the stock markets, for instance, on average are 4% per annum. So you're getting better than what the stock
why invest in the stock market when I could be getting risk-free rate from
exactly, at least at risk-free, right? So a lot of these fund managers, a lot of these large investors should then at least move their money into the markets, and this is usually done into the biggest risk-on markets, which is Bitcoin.
Exactly.
It is the NASDAQ. It is these markets. Now, these markets are pretty much at all-time highs, so it's going to be a pretty interesting kind of first couple of weeks, I'd say, reaction. I feel like there's going to be a bit of de-risking. Usually what happens around these sell the news events when it's good news, Bitcoin in particular, I feel, as I said last week, and I've been saying to our clients, is I feel there's just a bit more chop. There has been, but that's the focus, isn't it? I did an update for our Trading Academy members to get a weekly market update that you would have read the macro thesis with liquidity. I said, be patient throughout September. Obviously, with seasonality, as I mentioned before, October is usually a very, very good month. And Q4... Q4 in halving years is, to this date proved... unfathomable returns. Like, it's just been every cycle, they've lined up beautifully. I don't see this being any different to prior cycles.
No, exactly. First of all, perfect economics 101 explanation there. And second of all, it's, without being like, we don't like to make fun of people when they don't get in the market at the right time. But when we're providing this type of information to people and people ignore it, it's like, well, we've got to have a bit of fun, you know what I mean? But the sideliners, if you are sitting sidelined right now, you don't have to go and invest based on this. This isn't financial advice, but at least go and understand what we're talking about here, what the effect of lower interest rates is, why that means there's more money available in the economy, and how that should affect stocks and risk assets. So, and then, bare minimum, get in touch with us if you still don't understand. We're more than happy to explain it. There's probably 10 or so coins which we put in our high conviction on Trading Academy. That if you don't have them, then you're crazy, in my opinion. It's going to be an exciting Q4, I think, as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, one example of that we've been speaking on, obviously, is Sonic, which we'll hopefully be able to get Sonic only podcast on. But that's just one example. And the information we provide, it's not that you invest in this, like Will said. It's we give you all the information, the background information on what the project is, what their tokenomics are, who the founders are, when it was founded, why we believe it's a good token, the blockchain technology behind it, and you can actually go and make your own choice. Nothing is forced, nothing is told this is what you have to do. It's a really easy setup. and a really easy way to begin learning and educating yourself on cryptocurrency. You know, like Will said, can't provide everything for free, but, you know, I remember when we first started Crypto Chronicle Podcast, it was actually this time last year, 12 months ago, and I reckon Bitcoin was around 20 to 25,000 USD, and I was sitting here probably mentioning Bitcoin and Ethereum, sitting with Taylor, you know, in the upstairs room, saying, you know, well, we can't beg you to invest as sideliners, but, and, you know, Bitcoin's up, you know, 4x, 400% since then, year to date, at least 50%, which, you know, has outperformed every single other asset class yet again in its 11th out of 14th year since it's been invented. So if you are one of those people, feel free to reach out. We have heaps of free content we can give you, including the Knowledge Center, different ebooks on mining, trading, investing, meme coins, NFTs, whatever it is you're interested in. And obviously we have, you know, different courses and various services we can then provide paid to you if you're keen to really get knuckled down and get into it.
No, exactly right. Yeah, just that's the main thing, isn't it? Like, we A, have so much free resources available for you, and B, we're more than happy to chat with you. I've spoken to many people and said crypto's not for you. Like, it's not really for everyone. We'll be pretty honest with you. If, you know, we think it is for you, and if it is, then you can get more involved with it, start investing like we do. Otherwise, we're going to point you towards our free resources that you can start getting your knowledge to at least a basic level before investing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and one last comment I will make is you'll probably hear us say it over and over in the coming weeks, but I do think, you know, out of every time right now, it probably feels like it is, you know, non-financially, that it is the most important time you could get involved as a sideliner. The rate cut should be the most obvious thing to you. The US election in November should be, I'll put a chart up that shows you historically how these US elections usually go, coinciding in Q4 of a halving year. You know, it's almost unbeatable. And yeah, just get involved, reach out, and we'll speak to you all soon.
I always say this as well. It's like, if you can tell me a better place to put money, like, I'd love to know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, genuinely, right now, I don't really see other better investments, and I'm waiting for someone to tell me a better investment than at least Bitcoin / Ethereum. We obviously see a lot more are in some other altcoins.
Yep.
But if there's a better investment, I'd love to know.
Yeah, leave it in a comment, and we'll get back to you on whether it was. Alrighty, cheers, guys. We'll see you next week.
Thanks.